The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. So, if you want a quickie review of this book, should you read it, should you not? The answer, if you know me, you know my channel at all, is yes. And does this hold up to the other Wheel of Time books that I've given quite a bit of praise to this point? Yes, I think The Shadow Rising earns its place as one of the fan favorites, as it often is called, and it's one of the best fantasy books ever written, in my opinion. It is certainly in the upper echelon of the Wheel of Time as a series as a whole. And continuing into the spoiler-free review reasons why, this is the book that really makes the Wheel of Time feel like it's on the epic scope that the series as a whole really embodies. Yes, books 1, 2, and 3 were huge, and they already kind of outpaced in terms of world building most other fantasy series. But you have to understand that if maybe up until this point the world felt like a 7 to an 8 out of 10, book 4 really pushes that to a 10 or 11 out of 10. I don't think before the Wheel of Time worlds this big had been made. Before you even say it, Malazan Book of the Fallen fans, I know, but your book didn't come out till 1999. Wheel of Time was first released in 1990. So chill, all right? I knew that as second I started editing this video, I knew the comments I was going to get. Wheel of Time came first. I know yours is bigger, but ours came first. Okay. Back to the video. Yes, worlds this detailed had been crafted, but really Robert Jordan's Westlands, Aiel Way's Blight, all the sea folk, Shan-Chan, all of these things come to a real head here. Not so much Shan-Chan, that had already been established quite well, and we don't see it again for a minute. But yes, this is the series where the Wheel of Time really starts to feel like the Wheel of Time to me. I'm normally like moving more and energetic in these reviews, but I have a cat in my lap, and he won't move, so I'm gonna be rather stationary. It's okay. You can sleep here. Just my video's gonna be a little worse because of it. Where before the Wheel of Time felt like it could have possibly been wrapped up in 5 or 6 books, I think book 4 really pushes the narrative and the stakes of what's happening to a point where we as readers all kind of felt like, oh, there's going to be a lot more books. This is going to be huge. This is not going to be wrapped up cleanly in just a couple more stories. Now, the epic scope I'm talking about comes in through various aspects of the series. Yes, the character development is fantastic, and the plots are huge, but where I think this really stands out the most is the incredible cultural development. Robert Jordan has already built a few very cool cultures that we've been briefly introduced to throughout the Wheel of Time, but in The Shadow Rising, those cultures are explored and realized to their fullest potential, and they only get better and better as the series goes on. We spend intimate time with not only the Aiel and the Tuathuan, sea folk, all these cultures are just introduced to us in a very intimate and beautiful way. Of course, taking the forefront of that is the Aiel culture through Rand's plotline. And with that, I'm going to say I'm wrapping up the spoiler-free section of this video. If you've liked the Wheel of Time up until this point and you're curious about keeping going forward, get ready for the book that really breaks this series into its full potential, and that full potential is carried almost flawlessly all the way to the very end. Cat left, so I'm good. Now, there are several amazing plot threads woven throughout this story. The breaking of the tower kind of takes place rather abruptly, and it's left almost as like a mystery to us what really happened beyond just some betrayals and backstabbing, and I think that was the appropriate way to handle that. We as the readers don't know the high powers involved that well yet, and I think it would have been awkward to sit alongside them during these events. So having it take place from the perspective of someone who really has not that much sway in what's happening in Min was beautiful. It made it feel as momentous and world-breaking as it really was. The spine of the spirit of the fight against the Shadow broke, arguably in a way that can never fully be undone. Continuing on from there, Perrin has arguably his best plotline from the entire series. He has a couple more really great ones later on, but I think most people are in agreement that book 4 is where Perrin really shines the brightest. His reintroduction to the Two Rivers and turning into Lord Perrin, King of the Wolves, is simply amazing. The rivalry that emerges between him and the White Cloaks that carries on throughout the rest of the series is also very engaging. One of the best conflicts of character versus people that happens in the Wheel of Time. Of course, there's the kind of memed hate of Aiel and him's relationship, and a lot of people kind of begrudge that she is involved as heavily as she is, but I see the purpose she's serving in this story, and I don't think the stakes would have felt as high if she was not involved. So I am a fan of Aiel's involvement in book 4, and while I think at times times. There are certainly cringy moments in their relationship. It was not nearly as bad as many relationships that are in fantasy, and I think people in the Wheel of Time are kind of just more or less spoiled with how well done many of the relationships are. Not all of them are perfect, I'm not claiming that, but there's some really good done romances and relationships in the Wheel of Time. And there's a couple bad ones. Now, I've already heaped a ton of praise on this book, and we haven't even touched on Mat, Rand, Egwene at all. And their incredible story that continues on through the Aiel Waste. Now, I just have to touch on this again, that our relationship as readers to the Aiel is so well handled. The Aiel are not just a caricature. There's not just people who have a couple quirky characteristics because they're Aiel, and then that's it about them. Besides that, they're normal. No, the Aiel culture feels real, it feels deep, and every character who is an Aiel is affected very intimately by that cultural heritage, and I think that's wonderful. Obviously, the main plot here is Rand entering Rhuidean, and it's certainly one of the most interesting plots Rand has. I think book 4 is just kind of full of a lot of characters having some of their best plot lines. And this is kind of a time where it feels like we're almost being reintroduced to Rand. He seems extremely different than the Rand we saw in the last book. The Rand who managed to kill a Forsaken, oh my god. And I think that's best exemplified through how Mat seems rather confused in how to act around Rand. Yes, they're still friends and their friendship vibes are still there, but on the large, Mat seems almost mystified by his childhood friend and the differences he sees in him. Mat's constantly questioning, what's Rand doing? Who is he? What is happening right now? That's also just kind of Mat, but still. And of course, that kind of transitions us into talking about Mat's development in this story. He doesn't kind of have a lot of plot on his own, aside from just kind of tagging along and having one kind of Eilfin encounter, which was neat and pays off more down the road. So we'll talk about that in some more later on reviews. But I think the real point of Mat in this storyline was to have that perspective on Rand. He's this outside eye looking in that really reflects us as the reader. We're unsure, we feel kind of out of place, we're experiencing this alien culture just like him. It's a very good narrative choice. He's uncomfortable, as he should be, and that translates into us as the reader kind of feeling uncomfortable alongside Mat as Couladin tries to throw a spear at him for going into a city. This moves on into the final conflict involving Landfear and Osmodian, which feels huge compared to what the conflicts in this book were just a little bit ago. No longer is Rand hiding behind Moraine or just lashing out blindly. These seemed like effort-filled fights. These seem like things where people are almost evenly matched. Yes, Rand is still learning, but he seems like Luke in Empire Strikes Back. He may not be his full potential, but he's actually throwing decent hits, and he seems to be taking initiative, which is incredible that this farm boy has had this transition that feels mysterious yet believable, and it's great. And then, you thought I forgot about it, but I did not, we have Egwene. Now, Egwene's story within Shadow Rising I find to be fascinating, where her character serves as this amazing exploration of the Aiel culture. Well, Rand gives us kind of the clashing of cultures angle with Aviendha tutoring him, and the introduction of Aviendha is great, but I don't have time to really hit on that much, but I love Aviendha. She's Rand's best love interest. Fight me. But where Rand kind of has this clashing of here's my values and I'm kind of learning about yours, but I'm not trying to adapt them, Egwene kind of immerses herself in Aiel culture. She's wanting to learn more and not only respecting it, but seeing it as superior rather quickly in very substantial ways. And so having this three-tonged approach where Mat feels uncomfortable, Rand's a little combative, not really adapting it, but willing to learn and not against it by any means. Egwene is taking the college kid who's taking a semester abroad and wants to just be the culture approach. And it's working for her very well, and it fits her character very well. And then one of the best friendships in the entire series starts blooming between Egwene and Aviendha. I really love that friendship because there's no fighting over men, there's none of that sexist bullshit, it's just these two women really get along and are great friends. So from start to finish, this is really one of the Wheel of Time books that stands like close to perfection in my mind. The pacing isn't quite breakneck like the previous book was, but it does feel very quick, without feeling so rushed that you're missing out on these amazing culture elements, which are introduced so naturally through the narrative that you don't feel like you're having these exposition dumps that are very well hidden within character interactions. On top of that, which is really just gravy at this point, we have some of the most interesting plot lines for characters we already really love within all of the Wheel of Time happening. Perrin and Rand. Mat's kind of just tagging along, but his involvement feels very nice, having kind of Rand with his buddy here. So with all of this coming together, where would I rank Shadow Rising? I'd put it in my top 4 Wheel of Time books for sure. I'm not sure if I'd put it in my top 3. I might do a video after I do all the reviews of like ranking them one by one and show you where I think the best are, where I think the worst are. We all know what number 1 is. We all know what the last one is. But you know, that might be coming down the road. Anyway, guys, I hope you liked my rambling thoughts on the Shadow Rising, one of the best Robert Jordan entries into the Wheel of Time epic. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace.